Okay, for a salaried person making cash deposits in Saudi Arabia, if they want to declare that, that falls within the ambit of this scheme. If you want to keep the cash in Saudi Arabia, that would be higher rate. Foreign liquid asset not repatriated, remember the rate, 6%. If you want to repatriate that to Pakistan, it would be on the lesser rate of 4%.
We have one more question.
I told you.
Muhammad Hamza has asked, sir, you might have answered this question, but once more, can you please confirm how will one declare expenses, because there are no expense declaration in previous amnesties?
Hamza, I did answer that before, but when you ask so nicely, how can I say? Okay, so here it goes again. What you need to do is, if you have any undeclared expenses, you'll fill the amnesty form, or you can simply go to your consultant, give them all your details, they'll do that for you, and you'll simply pay a meager 4% on that, and it would be legitimized. And then when the next return would come, your affairs would be adjusted to reflect that declaration. Next.
That's it.
Okay, great. So meanwhile, if you have any questions, keep on writing them so I can address them in the next question answer break without us having to wait. So next up, miscellaneous provisions. By now, we have gone through a few bits. We have gone through the brief history of amnesties in Pakistan. We have seen what this asset declaration ordinance is. We have seen what its scope is. What are the exclusions? What are the tax rates? What are the timelines? And by what date, what can be declared? Now, there are a few important miscellaneous provisions. The first one is concerning confidentiality. While maintaining confidentiality of declaration under the ordinance is required, but there is a lacuna. Unlike the previous scheme, the last one, there is no penal clause in case of a breach. So the ordinance does require the officers to ensure there is confidentiality, don't reveal this and that, but there is no provision in the ordinance for the imposition of a fine or imprisonment of any person for breach of confidentiality provision. So this would be a big worry for anyone wanting to avail the amnesty. But again, it's not something that cannot be addressed in the rules. So it might be that the rules coming out by the end of this week or sometime next week by FPR might address this. But as it stands at the moment, the ordinance does not. Protection from prosecution. The contents of the amnesty declaration cannot be admitted as evidence against the declarants for the purpose of any proceedings relating to the imposition of penalty or for the purpose of prosecution under any law. So good news, under the ordinance, anybody availing the amnesty would have a blanket protection from prosecution. Anti-abuse provision. An important anti-abuse provision which was not included in the previous scheme is that the declarants won't be able to claim any allowance, credit or deduction in respect of the assets declared and incorporated in the book in consequence of such declaration. In simple terms, this would mean positive impact re-tax compliance in future. So did you get what I said just now? Pay attention, this is very important. So you have made the declaration, but you won't be able to claim any allowance, credit or deduction in respect of the assets declared and incorporated in the book. So you can't say, okay, I've declared this much million of expenses and I'll take that off in my tax return now. So this was a lacuna in the previous amnesties, that a loophole was left open for people to exploit. You can't do that this time around. You are being given the benefit to legitimize your wealth for a very, very low tax rate. And that's it. You can't take a double benefit by then again using that amount against a future tax liability. And hopefully that should lead to a positive impact for tax compliance in future. So I think this is perhaps the second last session of the day, Key differences as compared to the last tax amnesty. You should really pay attention now. This is the question you ask a lot. Okay, so one of the common questions that is being asked is different this time around. There are a few key differences as compared to the last tax amnesty in 2018. Below are these key differences as compared to the last amnesty scheme. Number one, the requirement to deposit cash in any local or foreign bank account would mean that the fraudulent declaration made by exaggerations with the hopes of continuing the existing malpractices in future with having the buffer of excess declared cash to cover the future income streams which might not be declared or under declared would end. This is what I basically explained to you in some details in the beginning, but I'll just briefly re-summarize it again. What used to happen was that you can just say on paper that I hold this much cash and declare that on the amnesty. Now the rates are normally dirt cheap, 1%, 2%, 4%. Whereas on your future income, how much tax would you need to pay? Harun sir, how much tax would a person on average need to pay on their future income, business income?
I think it's not realized income, isn't it? Some future income.
Yeah, in future on their realized income. You are becoming a tax person. Okay, in future, what is the tax rate a person would need to pay on their realized income? It would be around 29–30%. So what if you declare more cash today at 2%, and then you underreport that future income in the future? You end up saving 28%. And you continue to do the malpractice. And the aim of broadening and proper following of the tax laws would not be achieved. By having this requirement that you actually need to hold that cash, the aim is to try to close that lacuna. That still there is a possibility that some people might still manipulate that by borrowing cash from people, but it would be comparatively harder. I mean, how much could you borrow? And from who? And then you have to hold for that time period. So it becomes more difficult to exploit this provision. And more people would be actually disclosing the cash that they hold compared to previous schemes where you did not have to have the cash in hand or provide any evidence for that. So this is one of the key difference, even for any liquid assets that are not repatriated to Pakistan and are held in foreign countries, there is still the requirement to hold that cash in the bank accounts there. So this is a good change in my opinion. Then we have the anti-abuse provision we have discussed before on the last slides here, that you can't claim any allowance, credit or deduction in respect of the tax declared and incorporated in the books under this amnesty scheme, so you can't take double benefit. This is again a good positive change. And then the inclusion of broader categories of income streams like assets, expenses and sales within the scope of the amnesty scheme. Another important change, and in my opinion it is a better one, is the more impetus on fairer market values, as evident from the requirement of using the higher of 150% of FPR value or DC value, whichever is higher, or in the case of constructed property, at least 150% of the DC value. Then comparatively higher rates of taxes in case of foreign assets not repatriated to Pakistan, that would go as high as 6%. So it's still very cheap compared to the tax rates that one has to pay, but in the context of previous amnesty schemes, the rates are comparatively higher. Introduction of the timeline for late payment with default surcharges. Well, personally, I'm of the view that tax amnesty do have a negative repercussion for those taxpayers that have been following the law. However, there are times in economic cycles when a country, due to its constraint, is forced to launch a tax amnesty, just like I shared last year while discussing last year's tax amnesty. So if you are doing that, then the aim is to get as many people in the circle as possible. And then to do that, you should facilitate that. Last year, there was a problem that firstly, the tax for foreign asset had to be paid in dollar. Secondly, there was one deadline. And if that deadline was missed, you were not allowed to pay the tax amnesty tax later on. The change this time around is that you can still pay the tax on the tax amnesty after filing the declaration, after the end of 30th June 2019, but not without the late payment surcharge. So it's a win-win situation. Anybody who missed the deadline but want to avail the amnesty would still be able to do that, but they would still need to file the declaration by 30th June. So it might be that they have filed the declaration, their funds are still in the banking channel, or they have cash flow problems or stuff like that, or any issues for the business, they can use that. However, they would need to pay the late payment surcharge on that. So this is also a newer concept in this amnesty. The lack of penal clause in case of the breach of confidentiality is also different, though on the negative side. And I hope this would be addressed in that FBR rules to be released, because if they are not, it can have a serious impact on the effectiveness and success of this amnesty. And some of the exclusions are newer. For example, the Benamidar were not previously included in the amnesty schemes. So the Benamidars are also included in the exclusions now. And similarly, the gold and precious stones, bearer price bonds, and bearer assets are included within the exclusions to try to curb the menace of money laundering. So these are the key differences compared to the last amnesty scheme, and this brings us to our longest, perhaps the most theoretical, subjective, and the session garnering most interest: the reservations, the impact, and the way forward. Can this amnesty be a success? What are the challenges, and how can it be a success? But before we do that, Iman is looking here. I think he wants to ask the questions. So let's do that.
Zishan Shahbaz has asked, custom rules of Saudi allow a person to take in hand 60,000 Saudi Riyal per visit to home country. If a person annually makes 2 visits and took money in hand and bought property in Pakistan, does tax authority accept the money bought in hand or need to declare it in amnesty?
Which is what we were discussing with the
Arun is smiling because this is exactly the thing we were discussing with a partner institution yesterday. We were collaborating on joint budget proposals. It's a very good question. The problem is there is a lack of harmonization in various laws in Pakistan. First of all, you need to understand that in addition to the Saudi custom laws, you also have to see the Pakistan's law. Pakistan allows you to bring a certain amount of money. You have to check that limit. Secondly, the problem is while that amount is allowed to come within the country, you still have to declare that in your tax return, show the evidence where you brought it, properly account for it. If you haven't done that, and you still brought the property, then you would need to avail this amnesty to legitimize that. It is a bit odd because there is a set of law which allows you to bring the money in the country, and then you can use that money to buy the property, but then that is not recognized. So I can see there is a problem in the harmonization. But on their part, they can argue that they still required you to file your tax return when you brought the property, and you should have filed all the relevant records with that. If you haven't, there was lack of compliance on your part too. So in short, to answer your question, you will need to avail the amnesty if you haven't declared that properly before by filing your tax returns. Next.
Abdurrahman has asked, sir, what would be the case if bearer bonds are shown in amnesty? I mean, they are cash-like equivalents, but can't be deposited in bank. Can someone show bearer bonds now and understate future income?
Well, I just shared with you once again, just a while ago, that bearer bonds are excluded from this amnesty. So you cannot declare them under this amnesty. Next.
That's it for now.
That's it.
For now.
What happened today? Maybe people are understanding it so well. Otherwise, we are normally swamped with questions. Okay, that's good. So we can go into the last section of today's session. So the question on everyone's mind, what are the challenges, what's the impact, and what's the way forward? Let's find out. Well, there is a well-supported argument that any amnesty, for that matter, generally speaking, sends out a wrong message to the masses and businesses, particularly those who have been complying, that effectively the wrongdoers end up getting the better end of a deal without any severe reprimand. This has psychological and practical ramifications and implications for compliance in the long term. However, as I previously shared, at times the economic situation is so dire and does require the use of such schemes. There were, in my opinion, other better options to achieve the stated goals of this scheme. However, there are certain things which are positive about this scheme, including the requirements to deposit the cash in the bank, the huge focus on fair market values, introduction of late payment deadlines with default surcharges, and the anti-abuse provisions. Certainly, there's always room for improvement, and even this scheme could have been made better. So the most important challenge